The desert stretched endlessly under the hot afternoon sun, a sea of golden sands that seemed to ripple like water with every gust of wind. Mara, a woman in her late 20s, had always felt drawn to isolated places. There was something about emptiness that soothed her mind, a silence unbroken by the constant hum of cities and their restless people. Today, she had ventured further than usual, following a narrow dirt path that twisted through dunes and rocky hills. Her purpose wasn't entirely clear, even to herself, but something deep inside insisted she go. Mara's boots crunched against the dry sand as she climbed a small ridge, her backpack weighing lightly on her shoulders. She stopped at the crest and scanned the horizon. In the distance, she noticed a faint glint, almost hidden by a mound of sand. Curiosity pricked at her. She had explored deserts before, but this shimmer felt different, like it was waiting for her. She adjusted her hat and started walking toward it. As she approached, she realized it wasn't glass or metal scattered randomly. It was a series of rusted pipes, partially buried under sand and pebbles. They ran in a straight line, disappearing over the dunes, as if someone had deliberately laid them there decades ago. Mara crouched, brushing sand from the closest pipe with her gloved hands. The metal was heavy, cold in contrast to the scorching desert sun. There were no markings, no signs to explain their presence. Only the quiet desert, the faint wind, and a sense that she had stumbled upon something forgotten. Her mind raced with questions. Who had installed these pipes? And why, in the middle of nowhere, miles from any settlement? The desert didn't give away its secrets easily, and Mara had learned to respect that. But she couldn't resist. She followed the line of pipes, her boots sinking slightly into the soft sand, each step stirring up a trail of dust that shimmered in the sunlight. After walking for nearly an hour, the pipes led to a small depression in the ground. The sand had formed a natural slope, but there were hints of man-made digging beneath. Mara knelt and began brushing away sand carefully. The metal pipes extended downward, disappearing into a narrow hole, just wide enough for a person to crawl through. The sight sent a shiver through her spine. Part of her wanted to leave immediately. Some instincts whispered that she was trespassing into something dangerous. Yet, another part, the one that had spent years exploring ruins, tunnels, and abandoned sites, urged her forward. She had to know. Mara glanced around. The desert was silent. No one could see her here, not even the occasional hawk circling overhead. She removed her backpack, carefully placing it beside the hole, and shined a small flashlight into the darkness. The beam revealed a vertical shaft, surprisingly deep, with the pipes continuing downward into the earth. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself and began the descent. Each movement was slow and deliberate. Sand trickled around her as she climbed down, but the pipes were sturdy, holding her weight. After several tense minutes, Mara reached the bottom. She stood in a narrow tunnel, just tall enough to walk hunched over. The air was cooler here, carrying a faint metallic scent. The walls were lined with old bricks and patches of concrete, as though someone had reinforced the passage. She followed the pipes, which seemed to guide her like a trail, the echo of her footsteps mingling with the distant sound of running water. That sound made her stop. Water. Here, in the heart of the desert? Her flashlight beam revealed the tunnel opening into a larger chamber. Water pooled on the floor, glinting in the beam. But it wasn't just water, it seemed intentionally channeled through a network of pipes, forming small streams and pools. Mara knelt, touched the surface, and found it surprisingly clear, cold, and pure. Her curiosity deepened. This was no ordinary desert spring. Someone had built this, deliberately, with a purpose she couldn't yet guess. She explored further. The chamber had multiple pathways, branching like the roots of an underground tree. Symbols were scratched into the walls, strange geometric shapes and faded numbers. Mara's heart raced. It was clear that whatever this place was, it had been maintained, perhaps long after the desert had swallowed the world above. She followed one path, cautious, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. The passage narrowed, then opened into a room filled with old, rusted machinery. Pipes ran along the ceiling, connecting to massive metal containers, their labels worn away by time. Tools and discarded equipment were scattered across the floor, covered in dust. It was a hidden facility, buried for decades. Mara's thoughts swirled. What was this? A secret water system? Or something more? She knelt to inspect a panel on the wall, brushing away grime. Beneath it, she found a metal box, surprisingly intact. It had a small, intricate lock. Without thinking, she began fiddling with it, her fingers tracing the patterns. After several tense minutes, it clicked. Inside were yellowed papers and photographs, preserved against time. Mara's breath caught as she unfolded them. The photos were of people she didn't recognize, but they weren't just ordinary people. They were engineers, workers, and scientists, some in faded uniforms, others in simple clothing, standing next to the very machinery she had just seen. Handwritten notes accompanied them, diagrams of pipes, tunnels, and chambers, with dates stretching back decades. Mara realized this was a hidden project, something forgotten, buried beneath the desert sands. Her pulse quickened. She had stumbled upon a secret no one had touched in decades. One note in particular caught her eye. Written in careful handwriting, it read, "Ensure the flow remains constant. The world above must never know." The words were cryptic, but the implication was clear. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide this place and protect what it contained. Mara's mind raced with possibilities. What was so important that it needed to be hidden here, in the middle of a desert? Water systems, experiments, or something else entirely? Suddenly, a faint sound echoed through the tunnels. Mara froze, her flashlight trembling in her hand. It was a low, rhythmic thumping, like something moving deep within the chambers. She strained to listen. The sound stopped, then resumed, closer this time. Panic mingled with curiosity. She had entered someone else's world, a hidden place that might not want to be found. But Mara had always been drawn to mysteries, and something about this chamber called to her. She had to explore further. She moved carefully, following the sound. It led her to another, smaller room, filled with stacked crates and barrels. Some were labeled with faded markings she couldn't read. Then she saw it, a small hatch in the floor, slightly ajar. The thumping was coming from below. Mara's heart pounded. She approached slowly, shining her flashlight into the darkness. At first, she saw nothing, just shadows. Then, something moved, a flicker of light, or perhaps reflection, and she realized that whatever lay beneath was enormous. Larger than she could have imagined. A chill ran down her spine. She felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was no ordinary discovery. Whoever had built this system, buried it, and protected it had left a trail meant to remain hidden. And now, by following the pipes, she had found the heart of it. Mara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The desert outside felt a world away, irrelevant compared to what she was facing now. She had uncovered the first layer of a secret that could change everything she knew about her world. Mara knew one thing for certain. Once she opened that hatch fully and descended into the unknown, her life would never be the same. The desert, with its endless sands and scorching sun, had kept its secret for decades, and now it had chosen her to uncover it. With trembling hands, she gripped the edge of the hatch, ready to take the final step into darkness, into history, into a truth that had been waiting for her all along. The flashlight beam trembled as it fell into the abyss below, revealing a faint glimmer of something unexpected, beautiful, and terrifying. Mara's heart raced. She couldn't see the full picture yet, but she knew, whatever lay beyond those buried pipes would shock her life completely. And as she climbed down into the darkness, leaving the desert sun behind, she felt an unshakable sense that nothing would ever be ordinary again. The hatch creaked as Mara pushed it open wider, her flashlight slicing through the darkness. The air below was cooler, tinged with a strange metallic scent and something faintly earthy, as though the desert itself had exhaled into the chamber. She climbed down carefully, her boots hitting a rough stone floor. The sound echoed in the space, amplifying the emptiness and the secrecy of the place. At first, it seemed empty. But as her eyes adjusted, she saw the walls were lined with more pipes, thicker and more complex than those above. They twisted and turned, connecting massive underground tanks and conduits, some of which pulsed faintly with energy she couldn't yet identify. Water still flowed in some of the channels, though it shimmered unnaturally, reflecting her flashlight in a greenish hue. Mara bent closer to touch it, her fingers trembling. It was cold, too cold for a desert spring. There was something artificial about it, as though it had been treated or even created in a laboratory. Her heart raced. Whoever had built this underground network had clearly intended it to survive for decades, untouched, hidden beneath layers of sand and rock. But why? And what for? Mara moved deeper, following a narrow passage that led to a large central chamber. The room was cavernous, supported by thick beams and columns, but the most striking feature was a glass tank, almost 4 feet tall, partially filled with a luminous liquid. Inside floated several objects, metallic, cylindrical shapes, marked with faded symbols. They emitted a soft hum, like the steady heartbeat of the hidden system. Mara stepped closer, squinting at the labels. Some were in a language she didn't recognize, others bore numbers and codes. Then she noticed something even stranger. At the far end of the chamber, a door, heavily reinforced with rusted steel, seemed to vibrate slightly with the hum of the tank. The sound was low but persistent, almost alive. Mara's breath caught. Whatever was behind that door was clearly part of this hidden operation. She crouched to inspect the floor, noticing faint tracks in the dust. Footprints, human, recent enough to suggest someone had been here not long ago. A chill ran through her. The desert might have hidden this place for decades, but it wasn't completely abandoned. Mara's mind raced. Was she about to stumble into a secret guarded by people she didn't even know existed? Curiosity won. She moved toward the door, flashlight shaking slightly in her hand. As she approached, the humming grew louder, more insistent. She reached out to touch the cold metal. Then, from somewhere deep within the walls, a low mechanical sound rumbled. The door vibrated beneath her fingertips. Mara stepped back, heart pounding. Something was definitely alive in here, something more than just machines. Gathering courage, she pressed her ear to the door, listening. At first, only the hum and faint thumps of machinery. Then, a voice, soft, almost a whisper, echoed through the metal. Mara jumped back. She couldn't make out the words, but it was unmistakably human. Her mind raced. Someone was inside. Or something was. And she had no idea whether it would be friendly or dangerous. She debated retreating, but the impulse to uncover the truth pushed her forward. The desert had chosen her for this discovery, and she couldn't turn back now. With trembling hands, she slid the flashlight under the door's edge and looked inside. The sight made her gasp. The room was illuminated by a strange blue glow, coming from rows of tanks filled with a liquid she couldn't identify. Inside each tank floated a human figure, suspended in stasis. Their faces were peaceful, almost serene, but their bodies were rigid, as though preserved against time. Some were young, others older, and Mara recognized immediately that they were not all strangers. The photos she had found in the chamber above flashed through her mind. These were the people in those images. Engineers, scientists, workers, all preserved in the liquid, kept hidden beneath the desert. A wave of shock and fear washed over her. What was this place? Was it some sort of experiment? How long had these people been here? The thought made her stomach churn. She stepped back, trembling. The hum of the tanks and the faint mechanical noises of the chamber created an almost hypnotic effect, pulling her closer despite the terror building inside her. Then she noticed movement, slight ripples in one of the tanks. One figure's fingers twitched, a faint sign of life. Mara's eyes widened. These people were alive, somehow, but in a suspended state. Her mind raced. She had read about cryogenic experiments and suspended animation, but this was something else entirely. Buried in the desert, hidden from the world above. Mara's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, sharp sound, a click behind her. She spun around, flashlight swinging, heart hammering. Shadows shifted in the corners of the chamber. Someone, or something, was watching her. Panic surged, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. She had uncovered the secret, and now there was no turning back. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man in a worn lab coat, gaunt and pale, but with eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low but firm. His accent was strange, clipped, as if he had spoken another language for most of his life. "No one comes here, not for decades." Mara swallowed hard. I didn't know. I just followed the pipes," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to." "You have to understand," the man interrupted. "This place, it's not safe. But now that you've found it, there's no undoing it. What you've seen, it changes everything. For you, for everyone." Mara's pulse raced. Who are these people? What are these tanks? The man looked around nervously, then stepped closer. "They are the legacy of a project that began long before the world above knew it existed. We preserved knowledge and people to survive a truth too dangerous for society. But the desert was meant to hide it, to protect it, until someone worthy came along." Mara felt a strange mix of awe and fear. Worthy? Did he mean her? Her mind swirled with questions, but the man continued, gesturing toward a control panel near the tanks. Buttons, levers, and dials were arranged in a complex pattern. "You may not understand yet, but these systems, these pipes, they are part of a lifeline. They sustain what you see before you. And they will guide you to the truth, if you choose to follow." Her curiosity, her obsession with discovery, overwhelmed her fear. Mara stepped closer, hands shaking, touching the nearest dial. A faint pulse ran through the pipes, a rhythm that seemed almost alive. The man watched her, eyes wary but patient. "Be careful," he warned. "One wrong move and everything could end, not just for them, but for you too." Mara's mind raced. Every instinct screamed caution, but the pull of the mystery was irresistible. She had come to the desert seeking something unknown, and she had found it. Now, standing before the hidden lifelines of a secret that had survived decades, she realized one thing clearly. Nothing in her life would ever be ordinary again. The hum of the tanks, the shimmer of the mysterious liquid, and the silent, suspended figures pressed in on her. The desert above seemed a distant memory, irrelevant compared to this hidden world beneath. And as she looked at the man in the lab coat, the realization hit her. She was part of something far bigger than she had ever imagined. A choice lay before her: retreat to the safety of the sunlit sands, leaving the secret buried, or step further into the darkness, toward a truth that could shock her life completely. Mara took a deep breath, steadying herself. Her hand hovered over the control panel. The pipes above and the tanks before her seemed to hum in unison, like a heartbeat that connected the desert to this hidden chamber. Somewhere deep inside, she felt it, a call, a purpose. The desert had led her here, and it was not done with her yet. Her eyes locked on a panel labeled in faded, almost illegible letters. Activation sequence. Proceed only if prepared. The words sent a chill down her spine. Prepared? She didn't know if she was. But she couldn't turn back now. She had uncovered a secret buried beneath decades of sand and secrecy, and the choice was hers. With trembling fingers, Mara began pressing the buttons in a sequence she could barely decipher from the diagrams she had found above. The hum of the pipes grew louder, and the liquid in the tanks started to shimmer with a brighter glow. The figures inside stirred slightly, small movements that were enough to send a shiver down her spine. The man in the lab coat stepped closer, whispering urgently, "Steady. Everything depends on precision." Mara's heart pounded as she realized the weight of her actions. The desert had hidden its secret for decades, but now, in her hands, it was coming alive again. And as the chamber began to vibrate subtly, a sense of awe and fear washed over her. She was about to witness something no one had seen for decades. Something that would change her life forever. The chamber pulsed with a steady, almost living rhythm as Mara's fingers moved across the control panel. The pipes above vibrated, transmitting a subtle energy that coursed through the walls and into her fingertips. She felt it in her chest, a mixture of fear, excitement, and awe. The man in the lab coat hovered nearby, silent, watching her every move. A low hum escalated into a soft roar, echoing through the tunnels. The liquid in the tanks glowed brighter, bathing the room in an ethereal light. The figures inside the tanks stirred more noticeably, hands twitching, eyes fluttering behind closed lids. Mara realized with a shock that they were waking up, emerging from decades of suspended animation. The man stepped closer. "They've waited a long time," he said, voice trembling slightly. "This project, it was meant to preserve knowledge and people, for a time when the world above might need it. And now, that time is near." Mara's mind raced. But, why the secrecy? Why bury all of this in the desert? He shook his head. Some truths are too dangerous for society to handle. The desert hides, protects, waits for the right person to uncover it. You were chosen. The words made her freeze. Chosen. She had come here by chance, following curiosity, and yet somehow, fate, or the desert itself, had led her to this secret. She glanced at the tanks again. One figure's eyes opened fully, staring straight at her. A woman, pale but alive, blinked slowly, confusion and fear in her gaze. Another figure's fingers brushed the glass, and a low moan escaped from a third. Mara swallowed hard. She realized these were real people, alive, human, and dependent on the very system she had just activated. And now that they were awake, the consequences of her actions were immediate. The man in the lab coat guided her to a central console, where a series of monitors displayed the entire underground network. Maps, diagrams, and glowing nodes showed the flow of energy, water, and information through the buried pipes. "These pipes connect to more than just this chamber," he explained. "They sustain hidden facilities across the desert. Knowledge, resources, even life itself. What you've awakened is part of a larger network, one that was meant to endure beyond time." Mara's mind reeled. She had uncovered a secret facility, yes, but it was only a piece of a much bigger puzzle. The desert had been a shield, concealing decades of preparation, preservation, and survival. And now, by following the pipes, she had tapped into its heart. Suddenly, alarms blared softly, and lights flickered along the walls. Mara jumped. The man's expression tightened. Some systems detect change. They sense when the network is active. You must act quickly. There isn't much time before the desert responds. "The desert responds?" Mara asked, voice trembling. He nodded. "This network is alive in a way you cannot fully understand. It adapts, protects itself. It will test anyone who interacts with it. Only those who can follow the sequence correctly will survive its trial." Mara felt a chill. She was part of something far bigger than herself, something that had survived decades in silence, hidden beneath endless sands. And now, she was responsible for it. The hum grew louder. A deep vibration ran through the floor, and Mara realized it was coming from below the tanks. The ground shook subtly, dust falling from the ceiling. From the hatch she had descended through, a faint glow began to rise, as if the desert itself was pushing against her intrusion. The awakened figures in the tanks began to move more energetically, some pressing their palms against the glass. Mara's heart raced. She didn't know if they remembered who they were, or if decades of stasis had changed them. But one thing was clear, they needed her guidance now. "Follow the main conduit," the man instructed urgently. "It leads to the control hub. Everything depends on keeping the flow stable. One mistake, and everything collapses." Mara nodded, fear and determination mixing in her chest. She moved carefully along the pipes, her flashlight illuminating faded symbols etched into the walls. The hum of the network seemed to respond to her movements, intensifying, pulsing like a heartbeat. The desert above was silent, yet she felt it watching, waiting, testing. As she reached the central conduit, she noticed a hatch leading even deeper. Beyond it, faint lights suggested another chamber, larger than any she had seen. Her breath caught. This was it, the core of the network, the heart of the secret that had remained buried for decades. The man in the lab coat followed, watching her every move. Mara opened the hatch cautiously and descended. The chamber below was vast, almost cathedral-like, filled with interconnected tanks, glowing conduits, and a lattice of pipes stretching in every direction. Energy flowed through them visibly, crackling faintly like lightning in a storm. It was beautiful, terrifying, and alive. She approached the largest tank at the center. Inside floated a figure encased in a shimmering liquid, the glow stronger than the others. The figure's features were familiar. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized it was someone she had seen in old photographs from the facility. The figure stirred, eyes opening slowly. The room pulsed with a low hum, and the other tanks reacted in unison. The awakening had begun fully. Mara's pulse raced. The desert had kept its secret, hidden in sand and silence, but now it was alive, and she was at its center. The man spoke quietly, reverently. "This is the Guardian, the one who started it all. Everything else depends on her. And now, it depends on you, Mara, to help stabilize it. Guide it wisely, and you will ensure the survival of everything hidden here. Fail, and all of it will be lost." Mara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on her. She had discovered something extraordinary, hidden lifelines beneath the desert, people preserved in stasis, a network alive and aware. She understood now that her life would never be the same. She was part of a story that had been decades in the making, and she had a choice. Step back and leave the secret buried, or embrace it and ensure the hidden world thrived. Her hands hovered over the control panels, the hum of the pipes vibrating through her fingertips. The figures in the tanks looked toward her, some with hope, some with fear. The desert above remained silent, yet she could feel its presence, a living force observing her every action. Mara took a deep breath. She had been drawn here by curiosity, by instinct, by the pull of the unknown. Now, she knew her purpose. She would follow the network, stabilize the system, and awaken its full potential. As she activated the central controls, the chamber lit up fully, a wave of energy radiating through every pipe and conduit. The tanks shimmered, the suspended figures stirred, and the desert above seemed to sigh in acknowledgement. Mara stood at the center, surrounded by the secret she had uncovered, realizing that her life had changed forever. She had followed the buried pipes in the desert, and what lay beyond had shocked her life completely. Mara smiled, a mixture of awe and determination washing over her. The desert had hidden its secret for decades. Now, it had entrusted it to her. And for the first time, she felt truly alive. The energy in the chamber pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating through the walls, the pipes, and even through Mara herself. She could feel it in her chest, a deep vibration that seemed almost alive. The network had awakened fully, responding to her touch and the sequence she had followed. The tanks shimmered, and the suspended figures moved slowly, their eyes opening one by one. Some were confused, others frightened, but all were aware now. The man in the lab coat stood beside her, watching quietly. His face was lined with age and concern, yet there was a flicker of relief in his eyes. "You've done well," he said softly. "The network, it recognizes you. But the challenge isn't over. You must help them adjust, guide them. If the system destabilizes, everything collapses." Mara nodded, her hands still hovering over the controls. She felt a strange mixture of power and responsibility. The desert had hidden this secret for decades, and now she was its guardian. The figures in the tanks stared at her, eyes wide with recognition, or perhaps hope. Some whispered names she didn't recognize, others simply reached out as if sensing her presence. Where am I?" a young woman asked, her voice trembling, as she sat up in the tank. Mara bent closer, her flashlight illuminating the woman's pale face. She could see years of disorientation and fear, but also curiosity. "You're safe," Mara said gently. "You've been preserved for a long time. This place, it's meant to protect you." The woman's eyes widened. Protected? From what? Mara shook her head. She didn't have all the answers yet. "I don't know everything, but I'm here now. And I'll help you." The man in the lab coat stepped forward. They must be reintroduced carefully. Their minds, their bodies, they've been suspended for decades. Too much stimulation too fast could be dangerous. Mara nodded. She moved to another panel, adjusting valves and monitoring the flow through the pipes. The system was intricate, delicate, yet alive. The more she interacted with it, the more she could feel the pulse, the energy, almost as if the desert itself were communicating through the network. Hours passed. Mara guided the awakening process, helping the people in the tanks regain control of their limbs, their senses, and slowly their understanding of the world around them. Some adapted quickly, others needed constant reassurance. She discovered small devices attached to the tanks, monitors that measured brain activity, vital signs, and emotional responses. The network wasn't just preserving them physically, it had maintained their minds, memories, and knowledge, waiting for someone to reconnect it. Through the process, Mara began to uncover more of the facility's history. The notes and photographs she had found earlier weren't just documentation, they were instructions, a map to understanding the network and its purpose. It had been designed to safeguard knowledge, to protect important people, and possibly even to influence the world above when the time was right. Whoever had built it had known that humanity might need a hidden reservoir of wisdom and life to survive unforeseen crises. One of the awakened figures, an older man with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, approached Mara cautiously. You followed the pipes, he said, his voice hoarse from years of stasis. No one has ever come this far. How did you find us? Mara hesitated. I don't know. I was drawn here. I followed curiosity, I guess. And the desert seemed to guide me. The man nodded slowly. The desert chooses who can interact with the network. Few are ever allowed this far. You were meant to find us. The weight of his words sank in. She had stumbled into a hidden world, not by accident, but perhaps by destiny. The desert had kept its secret for decades, waiting for someone capable, someone who could handle the responsibility. And now that she had been chosen, everything had changed. As the hours continued, Mara and the man worked together, reactivating the network fully. The pipes carried water, energy, and life through the underground chambers, stabilizing tanks and equipment that had been dormant for decades. The awakened people began to explore the facility cautiously, marveling at the technology and the strange harmony of the system. Some whispered in awe at the glowing tanks and the hum of the pipes, others touched the walls, feeling the vibration and energy flow as if it were a living organism. Mara noticed something remarkable. As the network stabilized, the desert above seemed to respond. The sunlight filtering through small cracks and openings shifted subtly, reflecting off the sand in patterns that mirrored the pipes below. It was as if the desert and the network were connected, communicating silently through energy, vibration, and flow. Mara realized that the desert had been more than a hiding place. It was a partner, a guardian, a living entity intertwined with the facility below. The older man guided her to a central terminal, a large, complex interface that controlled the entire network. Symbols, lights, and dials pulsed in harmony, reacting to her touch. This is the heart, he said. Everything flows from here. If you understand it, you can control it. If you fail, it will collapse. Mara took a deep breath, studying the interface. She could feel the energy coursing through her fingertips, flowing into the pipes and tanks, connecting every awakened person to the network. It was overwhelming, almost too much for a single mind to process, but she focused, allowing intuition and curiosity to guide her. Slowly, she began to understand the rhythm, the patterns, the flow of energy that maintained the system. Hours turned into a full day. By nightfall, the awakened people were walking through the facility with growing confidence, marveling at the underground chambers and the intricate network of pipes and conduits. Mara had guided them carefully, ensuring the network remained stable and responsive. She could see wonder, relief, and curiosity in their eyes, a reflection of her own feelings as she realized the magnitude of what they had uncovered. The man in the lab coat approached her once more, his expression serious but calm. You've done more than I ever imagined possible. The network, it recognizes your guidance. You are now its guardian, and theirs. What happens from here depends on your choices. Mara nodded. The responsibility was immense, but a sense of purpose filled her. She had come seeking curiosity, mystery, and exploration, and she had found something far beyond her imagination, a living secret beneath the desert, capable of preserving knowledge, life, and history itself. As she looked around the chamber, watching the awakened people explore and interact with the network, she realized something profound. The desert had chosen her, not by chance, but by its own silent wisdom. She had followed the pipes, uncovered the hidden truth, and now she was part of a living system that had survived decades of secrecy. The older man spoke again, quietly. You must understand, Mara. This network is not just beneath the desert. It is connected to the world above. It can influence, guide, and protect. But it requires care, understanding, and responsibility. You are ready. Mara felt a shiver of anticipation. She had been unprepared, yet now she was fully aware of the path ahead. The desert, the pipes, the hidden chambers, all of it had led to this moment. She understood her role. She would guide the awakened people, maintain the network, and explore the full potential of the system that had been hidden for decades. As night fell over the desert, Mara stood at the center of the largest chamber, surrounded by glowing tanks, intricate pipes, and the people she had awakened. The hum of the network resonated in harmony with her heartbeat. For the first time, she felt completely connected, not just to the underground system, but to the desert, the network, and the hidden legacy it preserved. The desert had hidden its secret for decades. Now, it had entrusted it to her. And Mara knew, with absolute certainty, that her life had changed forever. She had followed the buried pipes, uncovered the hidden truth, and stepped into a world no one had seen for decades. And in doing so, she had discovered not just a secret beneath the desert, but a purpose, a connection, and a destiny that would shape the rest of her life. For Mara, the desert was no longer just a vast expanse of sand and sun. It was alive, aware, and full of possibilities. And as she guided the awakened people and explored the full extent of the network, she realized something even more extraordinary. The desert's secret was only the beginning. A new life had begun. For her, for the people she had awakened, and for the hidden legacy beneath the desert that had finally come to life. Mara took a deep breath, feeling the hum of the pipes, the glow of the tanks, and the quiet presence of the desert surrounding her. She smiled, a mixture of awe and determination. The pipes had led her here. The desert had chosen her. And now, she would ensure that what lay beneath would thrive, survive, and shape the future in ways the world above could never imagine. Her journey had started with curiosity. It had led to discovery. And now, it had become a life she could never have dreamed, but one she was ready to embrace completely.